Today, we're going to hang out with my good friend, Kevin Kauffman. He is a brilliant real estate business builder, operator, team owner. And today, I'm just going to ask my friend a bunch of questions because things are changing. So in the real estate industry, my friend, we got high rates. We got the NAR settlement. We got transactions just, less and less. Where are things going in the future? What are you seeing right now?
I feel like right now what I'm really seeing is a lot of chaos. So I saw a meme the other day, and I think it was pretty perfect. You sort of have two realtors right now. You got one that's like, cool, let's go. Just got harder, or it's going to get harder on some level.
Yeah.
And that's good for me. And then you've got the, oh my God, it's the end of the world realtor. Not a lot of in between. And so right now, feels like a lot of chaos. I've never been a big fan of like predicting things because I feel like the minute I do, first of all, I'll be wrong. But if I'm right, that can even be worse because then I'll start to believe myself. And I'd rather just pay attention to what is happening as opposed to what might happen. Always trying to look around corners. Don't get me wrong. But from a prediction standpoint, I just don't know. What I do know is that the standard way of operating is changing regardless. That's been forced upon us, and I'm not here to say that that's good or bad. I think it's probably good for the professionals, and I think it's probably really bad for part-timers. It's probably really bad for, I'll call it, unprofessional real estate agents, and I think it's going to be ultimately could be tougher on consumers than anybody else.
Tell me more about that. How do you see this being tough on the consumer? What obstacles are we not thinking about right now?
Well, I think what we're doing, okay, let's take technology for a second. Let's take a step back. Why is Amazon so successful? Because they've removed all of the friction for buying something.
Yes.
That's what consumers love. They prove that.
Yeah.
Open Door exists. I'm not here to say they're a great company. I'm just here to say that they exist for a reason, because there is a certain amount of demand for a more seamless, less frictional transaction. And when you've got the proposed settlement that has come into play and some of the things that are coming down with that, what's ultimately happening is creating more friction for the consumer, which I think is going to irritate them on some level. And then I think the other thing that is really still to be determined. So I'm not here to say this is for sure going to cause problems for the consumer, but I do believe there will be a higher percentage of situations where the buyers will need to pay a commission if they want to buy particular homes. Now, I don't actually think this is going to be the majority, but I do think it will be a certain percentage. And then of that certain percentage, there'll be a certain percentage of those that can't. They'll literally not look at certain homes because they can't pay out of their pocket or won't pay out of their pocket. And so they may settle for something less, or even worse, they may settle for no representation at all, which to me is like going to court and using the other side's lawyer.
Wow, that is a powerful analogy there. One of the things that concerns me overall is not only do I think this hurts the consumer a little bit, I think this promotes the iBuyer. It helps hedge funds. It helps large-scale investors with lots of money because they didn't need the representation anyway. And so now that barrier and then the net to the seller can become even more of a negotiating pattern or technique for them to come in and just buy more real estate and gobble up more of that market. To be honest, that's actually my only concern about this whole thing, is that unforeseen consequence of the corporate investor being able to purchase more.
Yeah, it's the second order consequences that shocking lawyers and government didn't think through when they decided to put something in place. It's like, what's that famous Ronald Reagan saying? Like, the 7 scariest words to hear are, "We're from the government and we're here to help."
Yeah.
It's kind of what we're looking at, right?
And so I agree. I think professionalism is one of those catalysts that forces professionalism to go up. And so my question to you, because you've run teams for so long, built teams, trained, thousands of real estate agents, What's happening to the single real estate agent in this model? What's happening to the new real estate agent in this model as the future comes in?
Let's start with the new real estate agent, then move to the single agent.
Yeah.
I do think more than ever. And listen, I understand that I own a team and I operate a team. And so this is going to sound self serving to a degree. But I do believe now more than ever and going forward, joining a team as a new agent kind of not just be a good idea, it'll be the best idea by a mile for most people. Like for right now, it's already the best idea for most people, but it will be a glaring, like, yeah, you need to do that so you can kind of get your feet wet, right? And so you can understand the lay of the land.
Wow.
And it's already that to an extent. I just think it's going to magnify that. Then let's look at I'm going to just talk about successful single agents because the agents that aren't professional, that don't take their time to really represent their clients at the highest level, like I think quite honestly, they're going to become extinct, and at least to a large degree. So let's take the successful professional, I'll say solo for, air quotes, solo real estate agent. I'm a little torn. I think in most cases, being on a team is going to benefit them as well. I could see where having the structure and scalability of a team would benefit them at a higher level when we talk about some of the changes that could be coming down the pipe. Reduction in per transaction dollars. So
Yeah.
meaning I sell more to make the same amount. I think having more leverage is going to become more important than ever. All sorts of leverage. I do see though my steelman argument against myself here though is like if I'm a solo agent, first of all, I don't need that many transactions to live a really good life, to make enough money.
100%.
I can be more nimble if I'm on my own, and I can make myself invaluable and omnipresent to a small amount of people, 100, 200, 300 people, which is all most people need to run a really great business. And so I could steal that argument both ways. But I do think the well-oiled, well-operated team it's going to be the golden age for them, my hunch, in the next couple of years.
Yeah, no, I'm feeling the same thing, and we've been feeling this thing, you and I, for holy cow, man, what, over a decade now, of this pressure on the industry and the pressure on the agent to increase their professionalism, increase their knowledge, increase their communication, increase the customer service that's being provided. And so you talked about leverage, right? What type of leverage do you believe that, whether it's the single agent or the team, what does the agent need, coming over the next 12 months, 24 months as industry changes happen? What type of leverage should they be looking for or putting in place?
I'm still traditionalist in the standpoint of like having really great administrative support is the number one thing any of us can do. Now, there's a lot of tools out there, especially with AI, with Chat GPT, is if you can just logically think through things, you could use tools like Chat GPT to reduce the amount of sort of brain work that goes into a large portion of our job. That said, I still believe the most important, most valuable is going to be human capital and having the best people that are powered by and enhanced by technology. And so whether we talk about things like CRMs or a tool like ChatGPT, or we talk about utilizing platforms like something you and I are both into, video,
Yep.
say like a YouTube or Instagram or something like that. To me, all of that all still pales in comparison to having really amazing people around you.
Yeah.
That is the one skill. So I'm fortunate, man. I've got this crew of agents here in the Phoenix area, massively successful, highly productive agents, are hungry. And the theme that I see though, that sort of next generation after you and I that hasn't been taught enough yet,
Yeah.
human leverage. And
Mm.
that's the part I'm really, I think of some of the people that mentored Fred and I in our early days. And I'm so thankful for that. And that's the part I'm really trying to pay forward, is to not be just like the old guy in the room that says, get off my lawn. That's not cool. Like, don't get me wrong. I've been using VAs in my business since 2009, but I also highly value the folks that sit in my office every day and go to war with me.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Um, one of these things that I think a lot of people miss when we're having this discussion about talent is, where else am I going to be able to get a 1 to 39 return? And so a talented individual, one thing to be thinking about is, I'm trading just 1 hour of Anton's time for 39 hours of their amazing time. And so that talent's giving you just this massive leverage. And I think people greatly underestimate that too, because technology will only take you so far when we're in a relationship-based business. So we need talented people that can build the relationship, service the customer, and provide that exceptional level of professionalism. What would you say is the most common thing that top performers are doing today? Because as you and I both know, this market has, throughout most of the US, it's down 40 to 50% in transactions. So what are top performers doing today that's helping them to stand out from the market?
I think it's a lot like what we did. So I got licensed in '07, and which means I just didn't know anything other than a quote unquote bad market. That's all I knew. I got licensed in the middle of '07, and I mean, prices were dropping by the day. By '08, they were dropping intraday, no kidding. And so I just did what I had to do to get the business. There's always a certain amount of business available because people need to trade homes. People need to buy for certain reasons. They need to sell for certain reasons. And there's always a baseline, even in the bad, quote unquote, bad times, number of people that need to transact. And so the great agents, the high performers, they just do what the market requires of them in the moment, as opposed to doing what feels good and just doing what comes to them. So all the high performers I'm around, and I am around, I purposely surround myself with a lot. They're just doing flat out what it takes.
Yeah.
That's it take, I said to somebody the other day, it takes what it takes.
Yeah.
And I know that's not always that's not as tactical as some people would want. But if you don't have that mindset and that resourcefulness sort of baked in to your mindset, it doesn't matter what tactic I give you.
And really, that could be said in like any business. It takes what it takes. So let's dig into that for a second. In your opinion, and this is slightly tactical, so go tactical for a second. What does it take for them in this market? What are they having to do that they weren't doing before that's going to make them successful?
Great question. So here's the deal. I love internet leads. I've never been a cold call guy, but I know people having massive success with cold calls. I'm going to share internet lead like tactics here, or things that have to happen. More than ever, we've got to be relentless in our follow-up. Like, being handed a lead doesn't mean anything. It's an opportunity. And so the things that I see from people that are successful, both inside of my organization and out, they are doing things like, first of all, they vary their communication, meaning it's never, I don't just make phone calls. I don't just send text messages. I don't just send emails, but it's phone calls, text messages, and emails. Some people I've heard even get granular, like, and it's like 2-to-1 text to calls and 2-to-1 emails to calls. So that's one thing. Another thing is, so I'm going to vary how I follow up with people. I think more than ever, especially for agents. Well, I mean, to me, this even goes for a high performing solo agent and a team leader. If you're making phone calls, like, you've got to document now more than ever. Like, if you're on my team, I can't help you if I don't know what you've been saying, what the conversation's been at. Like, we've got to get that. And part of that is it helps us get better at shortening the sales cycle and understanding the consumer and where they're really truly at. So we've got to be able to use our CRM. Like, I know that's a wild, crazy thought, but like,
Imagine
actually
that.
CRM, right? And some numbers that I've been told from a few friends that have like actually that are in databases around the country that have large amounts of leads. what they're seeing consistently from the top performers is they're having 35, sometimes as many as 40 conversations a week that last at least 2 minutes.
Wow.
Notice I didn't say connections, because a connection might last 30 seconds, might last 90 seconds, but 2 minutes appears to be some sort of like, okay, I've kept you on the phone long enough to where I can move us forward and I can get a better understanding of what your needs are, Anton. And so if I can have 35, 40, 45 connections a week that are at least 2 minutes long, that's been so far this year, that's been a big predictor of success. And so that's what I think of. It's the mentality of someone that will, first of all, call every single day,
Yeah.
text, email, do it within the CRM, and then also they'll get good at being on the phone. Like you got to understand, if you just take the first objection, like you don't just get to 2 minute calls because you're lucky. You get there because you stay in the box with somebody. You get there because
100%.
you'll stay in that conversation and go, great, tell me more. And you'll start to uncover like what their real desires are and what their real motivation is. Then you can actually help them move past the walls that they put up that they don't even realize that they have. And so learning how to stay in the box and stay in conversations with your clients or prospective clients, super important.
Super important. One thing that we've always joked about is this idea of buy, sell, die, or get a restraining order. Okay, so what does that mean? That doesn't mean that we're malicious. It's a mantra. It's a belief system. Another analogy that we've always shared with people is when you are getting through that 2 minute conversation, it's the same as the Raiders, because I know you love the Raiders, but the defender is coming just straight at you. Your job is to break the first tackle. If you can make it past the first tackle, you might make it a few yards down the field. But you got to break that first tackle, break that first objection, break that first annoyance for interrupting their day. And then we can get into a real conversation. But you've got to stay in the box, like you said. I love that. That's beautiful.
Dude, you nailed it right there. That's a great analogy. You got to break that first tackle. You really do.
Well, and I want you to use the Raiders because I know that's your team. Okay, so moving on. Like as you've been building businesses in real estate, and you've been doing this for a long time, what have you most enjoyed about that? Like what's rewarding to you, then, today, and why are you still doing this?
I think what's most rewarding is, for me personally, is like seeing something work, right? What I learned through selling real estate and then ultimately building a real estate business was that I love operating businesses. I love to be a business operator, not necessarily a real estate agent. I love real estate. I know it well. And so that's where I run my business, or that is the type of businesses I run. However, I love running businesses because I like to know, like, hey, if I pull on this lever, what happens over here? If I pull on this one, what's going to happen? And what's the effect of that? So that part kind of gets my juices going. What I really love though, or like what's really impactful for me is, like, here's the deal. I've already gone way past my wildest dreams of what I thought was possible. Especially thinking about, myself as a kid and what I thought was possible from a life like there. And by the way, I'm still pushing because I want to experience the most I possibly can.
Amen.
Helping other people do the same thing, get to whatever that thing is for them. I love whether that's helping them because they have, they need help with skills, or, like actual job skills, like in the real estate world or on the business side or even on the personal side. Like I love to see people in my world get what they're going after. And I love knowing that I might be a little part of pointing them in the right direction, making an introduction, getting them access to something, teaching them something, sharing a thought with them that they then go do something with and changes things for them and the people around them.
I mean, really, what I hear you saying here is growing a real estate business or a business in general is a function of growing people.
Yeah, for sure.
And so one of the things, like if you want to grow a big business that you have to get wildly passionate about is, am I passionate about growing people through the ups, through the downs, the sideways, and can I help them in each parts of those journey, but also not go on the ride with them? And that's just a weird mistake I really made a lot in the beginning of my business journey. Was as I was helping or supporting, I got on the roller coaster with them. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm not that tall. I'm not supposed to ride that ride. Like, this is their journey. I can help and guide from the sidelines, but I'm not supposed to get on the roller coaster. How would you recommend, now I'm asking selfishly here, how would you recommend that people help, support, lead, guide, Sherpa, whatever it may be, but then also don't ride that emotional roller coaster with our people?
Yeah, that was a tough one for me too, man. I was really attached. And I'm not saying this is the way that it's going to help everybody, but a friend was really encouraging me to take on some coaching clients, basically so I could learn that skill. Like she was like, listen, here's the deal. You've got to learn how to basically not go on the ride. She used different language than you're using now. But I coached people that paid me a certain amount of money every month for my time. And for that, I gave them advice. I asked them questions. I gave them feedback. Um, I helped them make decisions, you name it, right? I strategized with them. And I got to do so from the back seat or even from outside the car or outside the roller coaster. And maybe that's the thing that really helped me. I'm not sure. I just remember that being a step that I purposely took. I didn't take a lot of clients. I think I took 5 or 6 and that was it. I stopped there and I was like, I don't want any more. Otherwise it feels like a job. And I get squirrely when I feel like I have a job. But it did allow me a couple of those guys, like I had for years, literally for a few years. And while I don't necessarily enjoy coaching, I love mentoring people. And it's probably also because I've always sought out mentors as well. So
Yeah.
maybe that's part of it. But I think that is definitely one of the steps that I took because prior to that, having hired people, both agents and administrative staff, I tended to go on the ride with them, and that sucked. And now
Yeah,
I
no,
don't.
that's wise. That's wise. So you created an environment that forced the detachment or allowed the detachment to happen for you to grow as the leader. Very wise. What are you seeing right now that you would say these are easier real estate transactions, or these are things people should be looking for, or opportunities that are hidden inside the changes in the industry right now, either with your team or people you're chatting with? What's this opportunity that people don't really know about, they're not paying attention to?
I think the forced opportunity of buyer brokers, first of all, or that's what we call them in Arizona, which by the way, we've used since 2009.
Yeah.
We've used that as a way to increase the amount that we were paid always. I think there's an opportunity here to get paid more if we provide a higher level of service. Now, I know earlier I said we might have to prepare for getting paid less per transaction. We might, but I do think there's an opportunity where we might be able to be paid more for what we do because of how good we are. So I think that's one. I think like anything else, going where most people don't want to is always going to be that opportunity that you just referred to. So when I first got into real estate, nobody wanted to do short sales. So I was like, give them all to me. I mean, literally every agent in town was referring us their deals.
And
Right
you
now,
guys killed it.
yeah, because we were like, I'll go do what's hard. I don't know any better. I'll just
Yeah.
go do this. Nobody else wants them. And so we're like, we'll figure it out. And we did. And then we're like, before we even figured it out, we just told everyone, like, we know what we're doing. We're good. And so people started referring us deals like crazy. I mean, my first year, I'd been in real estate like 12, maybe 15 months. We might have had 90 listings at that point. Like it was wild because people didn't want to do what was hard. So I've always felt the same way about internet lead gen. Most people don't want to do that, but I'll do it because it's a war of attrition,
Yeah.
and I would imagine if I liked cold calling, it would be the same way. It's not a matter of liking cold calling. It'd be a matter if I was willing to do it day in and day out. Because the guys I know that are doing it, crush it with that, right? I think that anything that feels hard to everybody else. Are you familiar with Naval Ravikant?
Oh, yes.
All right, so he's made a
The
super.
Almanac.
Yeah, yeah. Brian loves to say Ben gave it to him because I literally not did I just tell him about it. I literally bought him the book. So he loves to like when I'm in the room say thanks to Ben for buying him or telling him about the book.
Uh,
But uh, that book and even just some of his just listening to some of those interviews and it live or I should say when they were released. One of the things I learned from Naval was to get paid a lot of money and to really be in your zone, you're there when it feels like fun to you, feels like play to you, but work looks like work and hard to other people. And that's
amen.
when you're doing that thing that you are kind of uniquely suited for. Like if you're a Dan Sullivan student at all, like he uses the term unique ability. You're in that when for you it feels like play, and for others they're like, I can't believe you do that so hard.
And I think that's also where people get into, the flow zone. So just to go into cold calling, for example, that's a hard thing. Personally, I've made probably 100,000 cold calls. We've just done so much of it. And what happens though is in that activity that is just super hard, if you are really focused and you get on a roll, what happens is you're like your next 5 calls pay for the whole day. And it's because you survived that first tackle and you feel it and then you're like, man, we're just going for it. And I think one thing that agents miss, and I think you've been totally hitting on this, is that it doesn't matter what you do. You just have to do something and go all in. You have to do something and play hard. You have to do something and then find the joy in the execution of that activity.
100%. You ever read the book by Cal Newport, So Good They Can't Ignore You?
No, I have not read that one. I'll add it to the list.
It's an amazing book. I'm going to give it away. I'm going to go ahead and punchline, but still read the book. It's awesome. Your joy or your passion is not found in. Now, this is per research, okay? So I'm not here to tell anybody that you shouldn't follow your passion. God forbid somebody didn't do something just because it felt good. But the real passion comes from excelling at things and from becoming a master at something. Don't get me wrong, not all, but most little kids like to play baseball. I promise you those adults that are making 5, 10, 15, 25, $70 million a year playing baseball, they're not passionate about baseball anymore. They're really good at it. Because they're really good at it, they do it professionally and it looks like passion to the rest of us because they're so good at it. So you can pick that thing, cold calling, door knocking, internet lead gen, wholesale, fill in the blank. And you can just get so good at it that you'll actually become passionate about it because of how good you are. And then here's the other thing. Once you become so good at it, it's like you get to the top of this mountain and then the person over here who is killing it with video, they recognize you're at the top of your mountain, they're at the top of their mountain. All of a sudden they want to have conversations with you because you can help each other. And so it opens up more doors for you. Just finding that thing that you can be great at. And the way you're great at it is you're willing to do it over and over again ad nauseum. If you're willing to do that and get to the point where you're so good at it, that dude, I remember one time taking a short sale listing, not kidding. This was as the market was shifting. So we're still taking a lot of short sale listings, but there's more equity or traditional listings than ever. And I'm getting my ass kicked. Like I'm going on 10 appointments, I'm getting 2 or 3. Right? I'm not good yet. And at the same time, this was kind of in the middle of it. I had this realization. I was taking a listing. I had my wired AirPods in, or whatever they're called, earbuds from Apple. And Anton, I no exaggeration. I'm sitting on the table like this, and I'm just talking, and I'm asking the questions that I've asked 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 times to prospective short sale sellers. And I realize I'm doing this like my subconscious is fully taken over. I'm now done for the day but I'm still going through the motions. I'm so good at it, I can't not get the listing. While simultaneously, the reason why that lesson stood out to me so bad is because I was getting my ass kicked on the traditional side. And that was the day I realized why. I was like, oh, this is awesome. That was the best thing for me. I realized like, I just haven't had enough at bats. I actually just haven't got good enough yet. And once I do, I'm like, I'll feel the same way. And sure enough, I did. And I did. And I went from the guy that if I knew there was other agents that got the same lead or referral that I did, that I wanted to be the first one to be interviewed or the last one, because I thought I could get them to like me enough to hire me, to I wanted to go first so I could have them sign and I got to cancel their other listing appointments. Like that's how good I got, because I realized, oh, this is just an at bat thing. I need to sharpen some skills. I started calling my friends. I called Ben. I remember I called Matt Fedek multiple times. I called our buddy Jesse Moore. I called other people who I thought were good real estate listing agents. And I was just like, please tell me how you do it.
Yeah.
And I just learned scripts and skills and you name it. And I got so good that I couldn't be ignored.
I love what you just said. I think a lot of what people miss in this internet age that we're in right now, in the TikTokification, is this idea that there's like a shortcut and that joy and passion and professionalism is immediate. When really what happens is the man who is lost finds himself on that journey. And he finds the extra passion, the extra joy, the extra purpose while experiencing the hardship, while doing the reps, while being on the journey. Instead of, if you buy my course for $7.99, you will instantly be worth $10 billion and get there without the struggle.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, 100%. This is where I've had, so I've had this throughout my career. And my latest version of that has been in community building and or quote unquote that use the word most people think is dirty in recruiting. I learned it first in recruiting for my team as we scaled our sales team at one point to over 100 agents. I learned it to building a community within our brokerage. Yeah. And again, same thing was like, I was lost. And I was like, I had to just take so much action that I figured it out. And then once I did, like, I realized, like, first of all, you gotta enjoy being curious. You gotta enjoy you gotta enjoy learning and be willing to. And then when you are, dude, you like so much more opens up to you and you're able to get to whatever your next level is. But yeah, the whole thing, like you're found while you're lost, like when you're going through that wilderness, part of your journey. And the thing is, I think especially for guys like our age, is that you get to a certain level of success and you don't want to do the hard thing anymore.
True.
Because it was hard, dude. Fred and I used to listen in 2008. Fred and I were loaning each other money to pay. Like he got to pay his bills the first half of the month. I got to pay mine the second half of the month. You know what I mean? Like it was freaking hard.
And we didn't have this level of gray hair that we got now.
Right. Well, you still have it, but the hair I do have, yes, is gray. But the reality is like then you get to a point where like I'm not going to use the word figure things out, but you get to a certain level of success. Then it's like, I don't want to go back to doing the hard things. And truthfully, the really great stuff in life is typically found in the hard things.
Yeah. You know that book, The Obstacle is the Way. So the idea of the struggle is the way through. The hardship is the growth. The top of the mountain that you're at is now the next valley before we get to the next mountain. I want to go back though for a second because you said something that's really brilliant that I want people to pay attention to. You said, I built a community. And I think this can be applied to every business in today's world because with this level of access to technology, with this level of communication and the level of things that we have, especially here in the United States, all of a sudden people are feeling more disconnected, not more connected. They're feeling more disconnected. So we've got to build these communities. We've got to build our tribes. We've got to connect our people. We've got to build these cultures. How would you recommend, or what are like the few tips or the 5 things people should be doing to build a community in their business or a community outside their business for their business? Tell me more about that?
So I think it start, I've never heard it posed like that. It's a great way to ask the question. I think it starts with finding out what, like, what are the people there who would be in the community or maybe already are, but it's not like cultivated. Like, what are their interests already? What are their desires? What are the things that they want? When I think of community, I think of first, I guess, in the very high level sense of just it's as simple as just bringing people together and then paying extra attention to what's needed. And that looks different for a lot of people. I think you could start with like-minded people, or I'm going to just use the example of what I've done in my real estate business because that's the experience I can speak from, and I've done this several times. So I did this with a Facebook group first, around just, hey, how do we bring people together to have conversation about real estate, about this business, how to help each other? Like, obviously, there's certain things I want to know that I know that if I ask you, Anton, like, you'll share it with me. And if there's things I have that you want, I'm gonna share it with you. What I've found to be very useful for me is figuring out what your thing is, what Ben's thing is, what Brian's thing is, what Keith's thing is, what Jennifer's thing is. And then when somebody has a need, and one of you guys is the expert, I'm like, you should meet my friend Anton.
Yeah.
He would, dude, he would rock your world. Why don't you do this? Or I meet someone new and they've got the thing that I know you're looking for. I might be like, listen, I really think you should talk to my buddy Anton. So it starts as simple as like making connections, but that can only happen if you're actively listening and are curious about what's going on for people. And when you're curious about what's going on for people, this almost comes easy. And like, I feel like I'm cheating here because I don't feel like like it's that hard. I've gotten more purposeful about it over the last 2 or 3 years, but it's not actually that hard, because I am naturally curious. I like to know why people do what they do. And so that's an easy way to do it. Having a cause is another way to do it, but it's really about, here, I'll use the Gary Vee analogy. Dude, I just host the party. You don't got to be the star of the party. Host the party. That's the way I look at it. I'm just the host of the party. I bring the people together. Can I go stand in the front of the room? Absolutely. Am I willing to? Absolutely. Is it my preference? I don't know. I could give it or leave it. Doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure the people in the room are getting what they need. And I truly feel like if I do that and I'm bringing value to a relationship, whether that's one to one or one to many, and the community itself is going to build. And in a lot of cases, it build kind of like tree roots. It starts building at such a interconnected way that it almost doesn't matter what I do at a certain point because you've brought people together and you've filled needs.
Golden nugget. Okay, so hold on. I want to summarize. So be naturally curious, create a platform or a mechanism for them to connect. So host the party, in other words, and be the catalyst that moves it around, whether you're in front of the group, you're behind the group, whatever, but be something that churns it around, and then create the culture or the story that then attracts other members. Was there anything I missed there?
No, I think you got it. I'm actually glad you did that because I find out what I'm going to say while I say it, same time you do. And so I'm glad you rephrased that for me. I'm going to
Well,
write this down.
and this is, I mean, both of us are on, a semi-parallel journey here, right? So we're both creating content. And then this idea of creating content, what we have to do as leaders and individuals is we're learning a new skill set. We're learning a new thing. We're learning to take our communication and to parse it down, to summarize it, and get to the point quicker, but also be able to convey that point to multiple audiences. See, one of the things in the past that I've done is, even when it's been a one-to-many situation, that one-to-many situation is almost always to the same audience. So I haven't had to tailor anything broad, and I haven't had to summarize it. I could be niche or specialized because the audience was clearly defined for me. As we're playing these content games, the audience is not as clearly defined. And the net is literally all of a sudden the blue ocean. So I love it because we're having to work on this skill set. And what I want you to talk about for a second, Kevin, is because you've been doing this. What are you seeing that you have to change there? What would you tell other business owners that they need to know about content or public speaking and getting their ideas and their thoughts across? Because over the timeline that I've known you, I've seen you develop into a phenomenal, and you were good to begin with, so don't discount this in any way, but you've become a phenomenal communicator. So, how would we do that for content, or how would we do that for our leadership?
You know, when I think of it from the leadership standpoint, kind of goes back to the community thing too. There's a lot of community in leadership and helping people be connected. I think another key thing about leadership is this is so boring, but like you got to be able to deliver the same message over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And Kenny says it best, which is like, you don't drop your kid off at kindergarten and then pick them up on the last day of high school, right?
Yeah.
They come home every day and then you talk about what they learned about and you talk about assignments and stuff like that. Like you constantly have these conversations. And yet with people we lead, we tend to treat them like we drop them off at kindergarten and then we're kind of annoyed the next day when they haven't graduated high school
Yeah.
because they need to hear the same thing again and they need to learn the same lesson again or a different version of the lesson. And so understanding the way people work, I think the best thing I've done is learn what makes people tick, what makes humans tick. Like human psychology and behavior is probably one of my favorite topics to learn about over the last 3 to 4 years, why we do what we do and why we say what we do. And combining that with curiosity has been, I think, the thing. It just helps me to like look deeper and understand people. I think understanding people and their behavior and not judging them necessarily for their behavior. Not that, don't get me wrong, there's some behavior there's a lot of times we should judge people for behavior. So don't get me wrong. However, probably a lot more giving when someone makes a mistake than most people. I'm way more interested in how you respond to that mistake than I am about the mistake itself.
I love it. So now I want to go back and just repeat the same question, but I want to parse it down. On your content journey and public speaking journey, what have you learned that people, whether in real estate or outside of real estate, they should know specifically? Like, this is something that's caused me to grow because I've watched you grow, for over a decade. Right? How do we help other people grow? What should they know that you learned from this journey?
Well, I think so. There's a couple different types of people, and I'm one of those people where I mean, dude, I started teaching classes less than a year into real estate. So there are some people that are just not afraid to get up there. And if you are somewhat intelligent and humble enough to take feedback, you can just get there through repetition. Other people might need more of a detailed plan or yeah, a plan, right? And then there's the best of both worlds, which is I'm not afraid to go up and make a mistake. I'm really not afraid to look dumb. And also, I'm willing to learn and ask and try to grow. And so, combination of being willing to do the reps, being willing to practice, and then being willing to learn and maybe even to a certain level be held accountable to that, which is kind of like the same recipe for succeeding in anything. Willing to learn, willing to practice, willing to do it, right? To speak, to tell the stories, to create the content, to make the phone calls, and then maybe being willing to be held accountable, whether that's just to yourself and the results that you produce and actually be honest about it, or maybe that's with like a coach or an accountability buddy or something like that.
Amen. 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 Kevin, what should people be doing today? So if you were to say, I need you to go do this today to make your business, your real estate business, your life better, what would you tell them? Here's what I'd recommend you do today.
You have to have an accounting of where you are today and be realistic about where you want to go. So I think that's sort of step zero. And then step one is cool. Now that we know where we want to go and we know where we're currently at, what's the thing that is going to realistically get me there? Like, what's the one or two levers that if I yank on hard enough over a long enough period of time, I get what I want? And being honest about it, like you have to then be real with yourself. Like, am I willing to do that? And if you're not, then like you either got to reevaluate the way you do it or what you're after. So being realistic with yourself. I don't mean realistic in goals. I never want to crush anybody's, where they think they can go. But the being really clear on where you're at and where you're going, I think are super important. And then what's that one thing you can do that if you just did it consistently, would probably get you most of the way there, if not all the way there. And then everything else can be solved for, right? Um, I think the other things that come to mind is like be willing to learn, be willing to be held accountable and coached or whatever that looks like. Be willing to practice and be willing, most importantly, to just do the damn thing you got to do every day, whether that's 5 days a week or 6 days a week. It really doesn't matter. Yes, the tools have changed. The internet is different today than it was like when you and I got started, but the principles of the way people work, principles of the way humans behave are still the same. It's just a matter of the mechanisms to get to those people or to complete the tasks that we've got to do to get there. So I guess being really clear on where I'm at, where I'm going, and then what's the thing I can do, and then allowing myself to be held accountable to that.
I love it. Kevin, if people want to find you, how do they find you? How do they get a hold of you?
Find me, easiest way is probably Instagram. I think it's just Kevin_Kauffman. I've got a podcast as well, which you and I are going to have to record here soon for my episode called Next Level Agents Podcast. And honestly, or Facebook, and a direct message on Facebook or Instagram is probably the easiest as far as
I love
connecting.
it. I love it. My man, thank you for coming on. Thank you for hanging out with me. We're going to have to do this again. I have learned things. I'm entertained, and it's been amazing to know you, over the last, almost decade and a half and watch you grow. So thank you for doing this with me today.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. Looking forward to running this back the other way, and we'll talk again soon.